There were four roles that the people in Singapore played that helped in the development of colonial Singapore. Firstly, the coolies. The coolies played a role in providing much needed labor as workers were needed to load and unload goods at the ports and carry goods to and from boats and warehouses situated along the Singapore River. They also were involved in rickshaw pulling, which acts as a way of transport for the general public of Singapore. Their contribution with their hard labor overall helped Singapore greatly. Here are the pictures of the traders from the early 1800s to the 1900s.
Secondly, we have the boat makers, where they played a role in building the ships and boats for traders to participate in maritime trade with other countries such as India and China. With the craftsmanship skills of many boat makers in the early 1800s to 1900s, they worked hard to ensure that there was a means of transport for the traders in Singapore. Their role was extremely necessary for the development of colonial Singapore, as without them, traders, who were the main ones in boosting the economy, would not have been able to participate in the maritime trade and consequently would have been making little to no profit at all. Their contributions with boat making overall benefited Singapore greatly. Here are some pictures of boat makers and their creations in the early 1800s to 1900s.
Thirdly, the role of the Samsui women played their part in Singapore's development as a port city by having to do hard labor and to build up the infrastructure of colonial Singapore. Without them, there would be no infrastructure in Singapore as there would not have been people helping out at construction yards. The work they did was hard labor and physically demanding. For example, they had to balance heavy bales of cement on two ends of a stick slung across their shoulders during construction. I don't know what Singapore would have done without them. Here are some images of Samsui women in the early 1800s to the 1900s.
Lastly, the role of the trader. The role that the trader played in the development of Singapore was by boosting Singapore's economy by exchanging goods. Traders from other countries would travel to Singapore by sea to trade for goods as it had the free port status. For example, traders from China would arrive in Singapore to trade silk and porcelain for wool from British traders in Singapore. This led to more people arriving to Singapore and allowed Singapore to flourish as a port city. The profits from the trade also contributed to boosting Singapore's economy. Here are some pictures of the traders in the 1800s to 1900s in Singapore.
Overall, there were different job occupations that the people in Singapore worked. Some were coolies, some were boat makers, some were Samsui women, and some were traders. In their own ways, they helped with the flourishing of Singapore as a country. Traders and boat makers boosted Singapore's economy, while Samsui women and coolies were busy doing hard labor despite poor living conditions. The contribution of those who were gifted with greater skills than others, like the Bugis ethnicity group with their craftsmanship skills, too played a part in the development of Singapore. This shows that no role is less significant than the other, and everyone is needed to play a part in order to grow as a nation. With the boat makers, building the means of transportation for traders to travel to other countries, those traders managed to participate in maritime trade and come back with profit. With the coolies, who served as indentured laborers, hard tasks like tin ore mining and unloading and loading of cargo were done mostly by them. With the Samse women, they built Singapore's infrastructure. Most of them were employed as labourers on construction sites to help clear debris and carry heavy building materials. With the traders, many were able to sell goods to others and purchase new goods as well. Traders were the ones who mostly brought money in for Singapore.